A steel cable snaps. It does not fall. It whips 300 miles per hour through open air in less than 1 second. It does not care what is in its path. Steel equipment, flight deck plating, a human body. It cuts through all of them the same way. This is not a scene from a film. This is a documented, recurring hazard on the deck of American aircraft carriers. And the sailors who worked closest to that cable, the ones who have to physically handle it after every single landing, while the next jet is already on final approach, are called hook runners. Lloyd's of London, the oldest and most respected insurance market on Earth, has studied occupational hazard across every industry on the planet. Their conclusion? Hook runners have one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. Not in the military, in the world. Most Americans have never heard of them. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why they exist, exactly what they do, exactly what happens when something goes wrong, and why these sailors, most of them barely 20 years old, walk out onto that deck anyway. This is Daily War Machine. Before we get into it, if you're new here, welcome. If this channel has earned a subscription, this is my thank you in advance. Now, let's get into it. The flight deck. Before you understand hook runners, you need to understand where they work. Because the flight deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier is not a workplace. It is the most hostile human-made environment on the surface of the Earth. Start with the noise. A jet engine at full military power produces 140 decibels. That is louder than a chainsaw held directly against your ear. At that level, permanent hearing damage occurs in minutes, not hours, minutes. Now put 15 to 20 of those engines operating simultaneously on a deck the size of 3 football fields. The heat. Jet exhaust at the nozzle reaches temperatures above 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt aluminum, hot enough to cook a person alive in seconds if they are caught in the blast path. The movement. The ship is moving through open ocean. The deck is pitching and rolling beneath every person on it. The wind is shifting constantly. The deck surface is slick with jet fuel, hydraulic fluid, and seawater. And in the middle of all of this, on a surface roughly 1,000 feet long and 250 feet wide, approximately 200 sailors are working simultaneously. All of them within feet of live weapons, pressurized hydraulic lines, and spinning propellers. All of them operating without the ability to speak to each other, because the noise makes conversation impossible. Communicating entirely through hand signals that have to be interpreted correctly in a fraction of a second. Every person on that deck is in danger at every moment. But one job carries a specific, concentrated form of danger that the others do not. One job requires a sailor to run into the landing zone, the exact strip of deck where a 50,000-pound fighter jet is about to arrive at 150 miles per hour, and manually handle the equipment that makes the entire landing system work. That is the hook runner. How carrier landings actually work. To understand what hook runners do, you need to understand what happens when a jet lands on a carrier. It is nothing like landing on a runway. A carrier landing is a controlled crash. The pilot does not slow down on final approach. The pilot flies the aircraft at full approach power, ready to go to full throttle instantly, because if the hook misses the cable, the pilot needs to be airborne again in seconds. The aircraft hits the deck at 150 miles per hour. The instant the main gear touches, the tail hook, a steel hook that hangs below the rear of the aircraft, drags across the deck and catches one of 4 steel cables stretched across the landing area. These cables are called cross-deck pendants. Each one is over 2 inches thick, braided steel wire, engineered to absorb the full kinetic energy of a 50,000-pound aircraft traveling at maximum landing speed. When the hook catches, the cable stretches, pulling out from both sides of the deck, running through a massive hydraulic system below, and the jet goes from 150 miles per hour to 0 in approximately 300 feet. 2 seconds. The deceleration force on the pilot is over 4 times the force of gravity.
The cable, fully stretched, absorbs energy equivalent to a car being dropped from the top of a 10-story building. Then the jet stops, the hook releases, the cable retracts partially, the jet taxis forward and clears the landing area. And in approximately 30 seconds, sometimes less, another jet is on final approach. That cable needs to be in position, ready to catch the next aircraft. The hydraulic system retracts it most of the way, but the final positioning, the last critical step that ensures the cable is correctly seated and ready to function, has to be done by hand, by a person, running out onto the deck into the landing zone with the next jet already visible on approach.
What they actually do. Picture what that looks like from the hook runner's perspective. A 40-ton fighter jet landed 5 seconds ago. The engines are still screaming as the pilot taxis forward. The deck smells like burning rubber and jet fuel. The surface beneath you is vibrating from 4 engines running at combat power. You have a tool in your hand, a 5-foot steel bar with a hook on the end. You run into the landing area, not towards safety, into the space the next jet is targeting. You find the cable. You guide it through a series of pulleys and deck guides. You confirm it is correctly seated and tensioned. And then you run, because that next jet is already on final. You can see it, gear down, hook down, coming at you. If you are still in that landing zone when it arrives, you are dead. You have 20 seconds, sometimes less. That is the job. Every landing, every cycle, every time. During normal flight operations, aircraft land approximately 1 per minute during recovery cycles. Each recovery cycle brings in 15 to 20 aircraft. Carriers operate recovery cycles around the clock during deployments. In a single 24-hour operational period, hook runners may run that sequence 200 times or more. 200 times, 20 seconds each, into the landing zone, with a jet on approach. And that is when everything goes right.
When it goes wrong. Here is what happens when it does not go right. First scenario, the bolter. A bolter is when a landing aircraft's tailhook misses all 4 cables. The pilot immediately goes to full power and flies off the deck, but the hook runners still have to reset the cables for the aircraft coming right behind it. The bolter pilot is already turning for another approach. Another jet is already on final, and the hook runners have to be out there clearing and resetting equipment while 2 aircraft are sequenced for the same piece of deck. Second scenario, the stuck hook. Sometimes the hook does not release cleanly from the cable. The jet is taxiing forward with the cable still attached. The cable is dragging. The arresting system is under tension it was not designed to sustain at that angle and direction. The hook runners have to work around a live, running jet, engines at taxi power, blast behind it, to manually free the cable while the next aircraft is on approach. Third scenario, hydraulic malfunction. The system that retracts the cable does not function correctly. The cable is jammed or retracted too far, or not retracted at all. The hook runners manually correct the problem. In all 3 scenarios, the time available to complete the correction does not change. 20 seconds, or the next aircraft lands on a cable that is not ready, and that aircraft goes off the end of the deck, into the ocean, at 150 miles per hour. Fourth scenario, cable failure. The cross-deck pendant does not snap quietly. It does not fall to the deck. It releases its stored energy, the full kinetic load of an arrested aircraft instantaneously, at 300 miles per hour, in any direction. Since 1980, at least 42 flight deck crew members have been killed or seriously injured in incidents involving arresting gear. In 1981, an EA-6B Prowler crashed on the USS Nimitz during landing. 14 sailors and Marines died. 45 more were injured. Several of those casualties came from arresting cables. In 2017, a chief petty officer on the USS Ronald Reagan was run over by an FA-18 Super Hornet. He lost his leg. In 2018, an airman apprentice on the USS George H.W. Bush was struck by the propellers of an E-2C Hawkeye. He did not survive. These are not rare accidents. They are the documented, recurring cost of operating aircraft at this tempo in this environment. And hook runners work closest to the source of those incidents than anyone else on that deck. Quick pause. If you're this deep into the video and you haven't subscribed yet, this is your sign. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps more than you know. Now, back to it.
Who they are. Hook runners are aviation boatsmen's mates. They are part of the Air Department, the division responsible for every system used to launch and recover aircraft. Catapults, arresting gear, all of it. Most of them are in their early 20s. Some of them stepped off a bus at boot camp less than a year before they are running onto a carrier flight deck with a jet on final approach. Before they are allowed on the deck at all, they go through weeks of intensive training. Every procedure, every hand signal, every emergency protocol. They practice until the sequence is muscle memory, not because they will have time to think on the deck, because they will not. They have to be in peak physical condition. The flight deck sits 60 feet above the waterline. At that height, hitting water is like hitting concrete. If a sailor goes over the side, the ship is moving at 30 miles per hour. By the time anyone realizes someone is gone, they could be half a mile behind the carrier. In rough seas, recovery is nearly impossible. Every person on the deck wears a float coat, bright-colored built-in flotation, and a cranial helmet with communication equipment. These are not precautions, they are acknowledgments of a probability. And then there is fatigue. During deployment, flight deck personnel work 16-hour days, sometimes longer, 4 or 5 hours of sleep, then back on the deck, day after day, week after week, month after month. The Navy has crew rest regulations. In combat operations tempo, those regulations face constant pressure. Tired people make mistakes. On a carrier flight deck, a mistake does not mean a missed deadline. It means a cable in the wrong position, a jet with nothing to catch it, a pilot at 150 miles per hour going off the end of the deck into the ocean. Hook runners carry that knowledge with them every time they run out onto that deck. That is not a metaphor. That is the literal weight of this job. The understanding that if they fail in the next 20 seconds, someone dies. And they run anyway.
Everyone else on that deck. Hook runners are not alone out there. The flight deck runs on a system of color-coded jerseys, each color a different role, each role its own version of the same danger. The yellow shirts direct every aircraft movement on the deck. They use hand signals to guide 40-ton jets through a space barely wide enough to hold them. One wrong signal, one misread hand gesture, aircraft collide, people die. The purple shirts, called grapes, handle aviation fuel. Thousands of gallons of jet fuel pumped into aircraft that are armed, running, and surrounded by heat sources that could ignite everything in seconds. The red shirts are ordnancemen. They load missiles, bombs, and ammunition onto aircraft in motion on a deck that is pitching and rolling, surrounded by engines producing 2,000-degree exhaust. They are also the crash and salvage crew. When something burns or crashes, they run toward it. The blue shirts are handlers and tie-down crews, often the most junior sailors on the deck, still learning, surrounded by the same hazards as everyone else. The brown shirts are plane captains, responsible for each aircraft's airworthiness before every flight. If they miss something, a pilot dies, not in a training accident, in the ocean, or in an enemy country. The white shirts are safety observers, medical personnel, and landing signal officers, experienced pilots who watch every approach and make the call in real time, safe to land or wave off and come around again. A wrong call means an unsafe aircraft on the deck or a safe aircraft waved off unnecessarily, burning fuel, stressing the pilot, complicating the recovery cycle. Every color on that deck carries a weight, but hook runners carry the specific weight of being the person standing in the landing zone between one jet and the next.
There is no buffer. There is no backup position. There is the cable, the hook runner, and 20 seconds.
What the Navy has done about it. In recent years, the Navy has taken steps: equipment upgrades, improved arresting gear technology, enhanced safety observer presence during flight operations, updated training programs with higher physical and procedural standards. The hazardous duty incentive pay for flight deck personnel was increased. Flight Deck Hazardous Duty Incentive Pay, FDHIDIP, is specifically authorized in the Navy's own language because of the inherent dangers and risks of physical injury associated with jet intakes, jet blast, propeller and rotor wash, high-speed rotating equipment, possible arresting cable separations, and the hazards of aircraft crashes and fires. That is the official language. What it does not capture is what it feels like to run into the landing zone knowing all of those things are simultaneously true and that the next 20 seconds are entirely yours to get right or catastrophically wrong. The pay increase was roughly $5 per day. Hook runners did not complain, because that is not why they do it.
Here is an image worth sitting with. A hook runner, 20 years old from somewhere in the middle of America, is standing at the edge of the landing zone. The cable is reset. His job for this landing is done. The jet coming in is an FA-18 Super Hornet. It weighs 50,000 pounds. It is traveling at 150 miles per hour. The pilot cannot see the hook runner from the cockpit. The hook runner sees the jet. He clears the zone. The jet hits the deck. The cable catches. The aircraft stops. The engines wind down. The deck crew moves. The next jet is already on approach. The hook runner picks up his tool and does it again. No headlines, no press conference, no name in any report unless something goes wrong. Since 1980, dozens of flight deck crew members have died doing exactly this work. Hundreds more carry the physical evidence of close calls, missing fingers, damaged hearing, burns, injuries that do not appear in the promotional footage of jets launching against orange sunsets. The aircraft carrier is called America's most powerful symbol of military projection. It is, but it projects nothing without the sailors in the colored jerseys who are out on that deck before dawn, in every sea state, in every weather condition, resetting cables, guiding jets, loading weapons, fueling aircraft, and standing in the landing zone with 20 seconds and no margin for error. They are barely old enough to vote. They are doing one of the most dangerous jobs in the history of human warfare, and most of America has never heard their job title. Now you have. This is Daily War Machine. Thank you for watching. If this channel has earned a place on your subscription list, I appreciate that more than I can say. Every single subscriber keeps this channel alive and allows me to keep telling these stories.